Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallie, and my good friend and co-host, Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you this sunny Friday?
It's Friday again, Mal. I'm great. Whereabouts in the world are you?
I am in glamorous Plymouth today. I've had a very nice little run along the seafront. It's beautiful. Very, very nice.
Are you looking out over that hoe at the moment?
I am indeed, yes. I can see Smeaton's Tower off there in the distance. So, yes, very, very lovely. And,
Delightful.
Great place to be chatting about this week's events in property and AI. So, let us crack on with our property news. All right, big news this week, all about firms facing some financial challenges. Again, just to kind of set the table on this one, there's been a lot of talk about how estates and lettings agents and indeed construction firms and other property firms have been faring over the last year or so. And this is a report from Menzies LLPs. It's called Fixing the Foundations, based on a survey of 250 senior decision makers from UK construction and property businesses, painting a picture of an industry grappling with rising costs, squeezed margins and persistent payment delays. It does kind of set the scene that for smaller businesses, particularly those that are dependent on some of the utilities and the fact that the costs are going up quite significantly from a personnel perspective, as well as from petrol and so on. This is causing some significant problems in and around the industry. Matt, have you come across anybody indicating that they've got some issues around this?
Definitely in terms of costs and needing sort of tighten belts, not just sort of looking to invest and grow. There's definitely a sort of a lot of companies going through difficult times and having to make considerations around potential redundancies and such like. There's a lot of companies who are really positive and making big steps forward as well, right? But it's not to say it's all sunshine out there. This report definitely echoes that.
Yeah, and I do think, I think generally we are quite a positive industry, right? Even in kind of downturns, you hear people who are just still like, it's going to be okay, it's going to be fine. But yeah, I do worry. And obviously I'm out on my tour right now. I think completed number 4 yesterday. So we've got 5 this morning in Plymouth. Of the 40 that I'm doing. And you kind of do sort of speak to agents who are not quite putting on a brave face, but, clearly I think the market has been tough this year. I think, obviously just as there were the green shoots of something quite exciting happening potentially through 26, we had the, Trump launching his war on Iran. And that just seems to have sort of set a bit of a holdback on the market for the first half of this year almost. So, yeah, I think that there are, as I say, there's a lot of kind of brave face being put on the current situation and people making ends meet. And as you say, kind of, maybe not making that higher, maybe, not kind of expanding as they might have been planning to do this year, alongside those that are, genuinely doing very, very well. And again, maybe it's the kind of the world that we operate in, but they tend to be the ones that maybe we end up speaking to because they are embracing technology. They are looking at, ways of doing things better, faster, and using tech. And again, for those out there that aren't playing around with some AI, you'll be able to find some ways that it can help. But yeah, no, I just thought it was quite a telling and quite a punchy report on the kind of state of the nation, state of the industry, and just kind of bringing home just how kind of challenging it is for a lot of businesses out there right now. So if you are feeling the pinch, you're not alone. But yeah, that kind of the overriding thing, and hopefully what you'll get from listening to us every week is there are some really, really good systems out there that are going to be able to help you, and there are people out there who can help you as well. All right, next story in property news, we wanted to just have a little look at a company that's been using AI and not perhaps in the best way. So there's been a report basically on Winkworth. So Winkworth's got over 100, I think actually maybe over 200 franchisees in the UK and elsewhere. And they've been using some AI to virtually stage some properties. And it particularly seems to be the one particular branch, which is Tooting, that has been caught by The Times, who interviewed a couple who viewed a home in Tooting that was markedly different from how it appeared in the images. So, Matt, obviously this is something that we know very well in terms of virtual staging, in terms of the power of AI. What's your take on this story?
It's not even really necessarily virtual staging, is it? Like, you could argue that staging in general is maybe misleading people. And like, I know in this particular one, I think there was a mention that a chimney breast had been removed and the rooms looked larger than they did do. But if you look at sometimes with a fisheye lens on an agency photographs, rooms look bigger than they are. And if you manage to scrabble up on a stool and into the back corner of a particular room, you can make it look a heck of a lot bigger than it maybe feels in person. And I think maybe a part of this is just that reaction. And I've got a bit of history with The Times, so I do feel that sometimes they're obviously a bit more trying to grab clickbait headlines around things, but we'll park that that for one moment.
You
It
can't
could
leave us in that
it
suspense.
could easily have been it could easily have been it's the first time probably these things come up, but if Winkworth had the opportunity to just say, look, we could have virtually staged it, we could have normally staged it, and the people may well have then been commenting that, hold on, I bought the house and it wasn't as great as all that furniture they put in. You know, we were with Lemon and Lime Interiors, weren't we, the other week? And
Yeah,
some of the
amazing.
over makeovers they do with their work is absolutely stunning, and it
So
really
good.
sets people in the right frame of mind. And that's part of the art of the estate agency, isn't it? Making people realise just what is possible with the space that they're looking around, rather than, hold on, it's a bit yellow. I won't say what Elaine said actually. Well, I nearly did. You can smell the cat pee coming off the photo sometimes. Like you need part of that to engage people, don't you? And I think maybe this is just that first opportunity to have a dig in the ribs of the agents who are trying to make most of the new technologies.
Yeah, I think you're right. There is, it's the line, isn't it? It's where is that line between actually kind of showcasing something that is completely different? I think I remember, again, they periodically come up now, these stories. There was one agent who like basically removed a shop from next door. So just showed the house
Get
without
rid
like
of
a
the
kebab shop.
M25 on your
Yeah,
doorstep, or move the
exactly
North
right.
Circular.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that there are, I think this history of a state agency, if you go back since the dawn of time, has probably been, just making things look a little bit better than they might actually be in real. But that's the sales process, and you could argue that in any, consumer environment where people are looking to buy them, perhaps, they might, that McDonald's burger may not actually look quite as appetizing when it comes out from the kitchen. But
Why
yeah,
did
I
you pick
think
on McDonald's? Like, was Burger King? Are they better?
no. Do you know what? My son has just got a job at McDonald's, and that was why it sprang to mind.
Fair enough.
As in, he's studying for his A level, so he's just got a part time job there. So anyway, digressing slightly, I'm going to find out what that time story is from you, and then I'll tell people later on. I'll put it in the newsletter or something.
There's a
But yeah,
reason to come to the roadshow, is it, Mal?
that's right. Dangling the secret story from Matt Goddard. But yeah, look, we do virtual staging a lot for loads and loads of agents, and it is it's an art. You have to make sure, obviously, that there is it bears resemblance to what is there. We spend a long time with tech, making sure that there's the structure is correct. So we actually have a kind of AI architect. We've got an AI photographer. We've got various AIs performing different functions within that process. And yes, if you do kind of just sort of ask it to produce something, then it can be quite wild, and you may not actually be able to spot what's missing. So actually, it's put another window in that wall, and you're just like, all right, and if you put that out, then that's problematic. But yeah, I think just like with any new technology, with any kind of enthusiastic use, there's lessons to be learned. There's traps to fall into. But yeah, I do think it seems quite unfortunate that this particular agent has been hammered quite so much as a result. But yeah, and obviously, I think that Winkworth franchising at that head office has kind of just put some guardrails in place, I think, for future use of it. But yes, it is something that I think people need to be kind of just mindful that these things do need to be checked before they're going to go out, because they can be very, yes, there are risks to it unless you use the very kind of skilled essential operators who kind of know what they're doing. So that's our second story in our property news. Third up, kind of been torn a little bit on this one. So we got EXP who've passed 1,000 agent milestones. So I mean, that's a lot, right? They've done pretty well since
I feel like
2019.
when we started talking through this, and we could probably flick back through the show notes, but I think it was around about 500-600 this time last year, or early last year when we started doing these. The rate at which it's grown, and obviously it's the nature of the business is that you can sort of it almost compounds, doesn't it, as they get people into the network. But even so, it's one of those things where I think maybe now we've hit 1,000, we'll stop shouting out every time, unless we're scrambling around for new news on the show. But it's very, it was great to see that it's obviously Adam Day and the team there keep growing it, and they do have some really strong agents in that network.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, just a huge congrats to them. They've kind of obviously built from pretty much nothing 7 years ago, and have done incredibly well. And yeah, like you, I know a lot of great agents who are part of that network. And yeah, it just keeps going from strength to strength. So well done to Adam Day and co. All right. Next up, we want to move into our AI and tech news. All right. So the big stories around AI and tech news this week has all been about money, 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 money. So Anthropic is sort of the big beast now, and it's fascinating and really impressive to see how they have grown, particularly over the last sort of 6 to 8 months, into essentially the kind of dominant player in this particular space, overtaking OpenAI. So the news this week is that they've raised another $65 billion and they are nearing the 1 trillion valuation ahead of an expected IPO. So yeah, this is just going to kind of keep building, I think, isn't it? Because raising 65 billion is insane. And again, I keep going back to, I think that the largest IPO up to this point was raised like 24 billion, and everyone was like, that's amazing. And this is private funding, 65 billion, with a view to IPOing, valuing the business at something like over $1 trillion. I mean, this is incredible, right, man?
There's some amazing figures floating around. It's like with the conversation we had right at the start about the gloom surrounding the sector and people having to cost cuts. It sort of just becomes a bit disconnected from reality. But it's not just them, is it? Alphabet, the parent company of Google, are talking about raising 80 billion to fund their AI build out. We've got obviously this is talking about SpaceX. You're talking about OpenAI. Interestingly, OpenAI yesterday, I think it was, they announced that they've hit 1 billion active users worldwide. So they're sort of flying again, and that's being driven, I expect, by Codex. We also said, I think it's something like 85% of their users are on the free models. A lot of the time we're talking about the bleeding edge stuff, and actually most people are using those free models that are maybe 6 months behind in terms of the releases. But even so, there's a lot of cash flowing around there, and it's just there is a concern, and we talked about it off air. Was that we chatted before about token maxing and sort of token leaderboards as a way of sort of trying to force even development teams into utilizing agentic coding specifically to really sort of get people into it. Maybe they've been a bit reticent, and even this week I've been with development teams who have not using it, and some people who didn't even know what Codex was as opposed to Claude Code. So it's like you mentioned it offline as well about Jevons paradox, that actually people are now getting to that stage where we were maybe 6 months or a year ago and really starting to adopt these things. But actually companies who are like Uber have put in a limit on their token spend now. Walmart have also done it. Where there's been a backlash this week around GitHub moving to a token-based model, but it's getting to that stage where people are now actually looking not at the efficiencies of the token. So when we say, the new model from OpenAI, ChatGPT, is the best, is it the best in terms of actually token consumption? Because everyone's going to start looking at how much is it actually costing me in real money. Even this morning, my Claude's already sat at 95% of the consumption for the day, and it's 8:09 on a Friday morning.
Yeah, no, it is crazy because it is so easy to for that to just expand and bloat out. And you're right, actually, it's going to be much more important to have efficiency. But then, the models themselves, it's almost like it's dependent on them as well, right? So it's a two-way street. You've got the prompting side of things. So if your prompts are not good enough or specific enough, then you have to have like 2 or 3 go rounds before you actually get what you want. But at the same time, if the model is not intelligent enough to actually understand what you're trying to get at, then again, you're going to get around 2 or 3 times more than you would otherwise. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how all of this kind of plays out. And into this as well comes, the open source models. And there's news this week of Gemma 4 from Google, which is their kind of, almost on device kind of, put it on a laptop and it will just work for you. And I think that's going to become much more of a feature in the in the climate as we go through, because as you say, people are quite comfortable using the free versions, which don't have the power of the bleeding edge ones that perhaps are being more used by those on the frontier. And actually, if you can use DeepSeek or if you can use Gemma and you can use even one of the old Llama models and it's free and you can kind of just keep going back to it, then is the significantly increased cost of using these cutting edge models going to actually force people to just kind of look at having these on-site models rather than necessarily going to everything that's kind of coming out of the labs right now. And then what does that mean for the IPOs? We were talking offline, weren't we, about actually, are we going to hit, is this kind of peak, because everybody's kind of trying to use all the cutting edge models, but, GitHub, as you say, Copilot, that's now metered. So, it's consumption based rather than just a subscription based. And that's going to make people at least think, because, again, you've read the stories. I read the stories, people going from like paying 29 quid a month to paying £3,000 a month. And it's like, that's not something you can really kind of play for in an SME budget. Other things, so I'm on the tour. This is the third tour that I've done 6 months ago, speaking to agents, that they weren't, they were only just kind of getting their heads around sort of ChatGPT, a lot of them. And now I'm seeing, them far more educated about what actually, AI can do. And many more of them are using these tools in their day to day. So yeah, I think there's growth, but I don't think it's going to be kind of a steady kind of, everybody rushing towards the frontier ones. I think there's going to be a lot of people looking at some of the older models and thinking that they're good enough, right?
I also I believe it's actually, and I say believe it rather than saying think, but it's the enterprises. They're the ones who are driving this, and they're the ones who are burning through the most tokens, right? So we talk about Uber and we talk about Walmart. They're the ones who have got the most spend going through Anthropic rather than through OpenAI, and it's also those guys who've started to have line items for AI usage in their P&Ls and
Yeah.
sort of making sure that those things are planned out, and we will get to that stage. And you said about it needs to be the models that are efficient, but I think it's really important people start to think about it, not just the models, but also the harnesses that you use those models in. And by harness, I mean Codex or Claude Code or Claude Cowork, because
Yep.
it's becoming as important to see the releases of the harnesses as it is to see actually what's coming out of the models. And cleverly, and I guess as you'd expect, the Anthropic made a move whereby you didn't pay as much for your usage if you're using Claude Code or Claude Cowork as if you would do like you had, where you're plugging Claude into your OpenClaw, and therefore you're actually having to pay per token, right? So it's shifting back, I think, towards a world where you don't think about the models as much as what is the application on my desktop machine or my laptop that I'm using those things for.
Yeah. So the ecosystem is maturing kind of gradually, but yes, as you say, it's kind of going to be increasingly important to look at your stack essentially. So actually, what's the model underneath? What's the harness that goes over the top, and what are you prompting, at the human end, or what are you and your team prompting at the human end? And I think all of those, the skills of building those and running those, I think is going to be almost the kind of software developer of the future, right? That's going to be the highly prized kind of job.
I don't think even software developer. It's a bit of a, I won't use that word, gimmicky phrase, but it's the knowledge worker. It's if you get up in the morning and it scanned your emails and looked at your appointments and seen the tasks that you didn't fill out, and that's the point of Codex and Cowork, isn't it? It's not just your coder tasks; it's the dull admin that you don't get around to doing because you're driving back from Portsmouth Hoe or wherever you are. Yeah, Plymouth.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. So yeah, I think that there's, as you say, that there's so much money kind of sloshing around in here. We also got DeepSeek, one of the Chinese models, eyeing 7.4 billion funding round, valuing it up to 59 billion. So there is a lot of land grab going on kind of behind the scenes. And yeah, as it kind of bursts out onto the public markets, as it will do in the coming months, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the appetite of the kind of general investor is going to be for any of these or all of these, with OpenAI kind of coming on later on in the year as well. So we will keep you up to date with all of those as they kind of come through. Also, we will keep you up to date with next week. Apple has their own developer conference.
Yeah, excited, aren't you?
I am, and only because, not only because I'm obviously a stupid fanboy of Apple. I have my iPhone, and Siri on my iPhone has long been the kind of the poor relation to all of the other stuff that I'm doing. But the news is that with Google Gemini now underpinning Siri, that there's actually going to be a really big kind of announcement about how Siri is going to operate going forwards. And I think that's going to be I think it's going to be a step change. I think that suddenly the general public are going to be using Siri, and instead of just using it for timing cookers and asking what the weather is, actually going to find that it's really intelligent. And I think that is actually going to supercharge a lot of of people's understanding of AI. And I think it's going to be pretty huge. Now let's always look at previously Apple Intelligence for about 3 years ago was such a damn squib that it just kind of ruined it for a few years. But yeah, if it comes off the way that it should come off, and should have done 3 years ago, I think it's going to be really exciting. Are you not excited?
It's, as the tagline sounds like, it's going to be all systems glow, which is a bit of a nod to the liquid glass side of things, isn't it? But I think obviously they've got a huge distribution network. I was really lucky to spend a day earlier this week, Prospect Estate Agency over in Berkshire, and we had all of their senior managers and through the Reading office during the course of the day, and I think only one person had an Android phone, and they were sort of heckled out the room. So it's like that distribution, if they pull it off, amazing. And it's the approach that they're looking to take is the BYO approach, isn't it? Like you can have ChatGPT or Claude, whichever account that you're using on top of, or in addition to them obviously using those Gemini models.
As default, exactly that. So yeah, so you can bring your other stuff and your history and the memory and all that sort of stuff into play as well. But I just think for people who have just kind of like known about AI, kind of thought it's probably something they'll get round to at some stage, to have that just in your pocket and able to just operate and, you know, sitting in the car and chatting with it and all that sort of stuff, I think is just going to be I think it's just going to light a fire underneath it. I just think people are going to suddenly, you know, understand a lot more about AI, and I think that's going to be great for everybody. You know,
so that's the 8th of June, Mel. So is that factored into your 40-day roadshow? Are you nipping on a flight, heading over, and then flying back again?
I'm just sitting very still. I'm not doing anything. No, I will be out on the road then as well. Where am I going to be? I think I'm in Doncaster on the 8th.
Yeah,
so
there you go. 6 p.m. in Donny. Just get yourself settled down.
Yeah,
good farmers market in Donny.
Yes. When I was doing the videos, and again, you'd probably see the videos on LinkedIn for Donny. For some reason, it was very obsessed with kind of horse-drawn carts and things like that around the market. So that's what's in the AI video for that one. Anyway, so that's Apple next week. Again, you will undoubtedly get an update from us as to how it's gone next week. More AI news. OpenAI has made another hardware move with the acquisition of Opal Electronics. And that is a business that focuses very much on kind of cutting edge cameras. So we have spoken before, you know, and Johnny Ive, designer of the iPhone, is now part of his business is now part of OpenAI and helping them to develop some hardware. We think that it's going to be something that is some kind of like little gadget, whether it's an in-ear device or, you know, they're talking about pins and things like that, with the ability to listen and also to see. So this kind of makes sense, this acquisition, in terms of being able to put very, very, very tiny cameras into very small objects. Matt, are you as stupidly excited as I am about things hardware?
I just waggled my applaud at you while you were talking, but I think you were off.
There it is.
You're looking at something else, but it ties in with Sam Altman's intended vision for ambient computing, doesn't it? Sitting there lurking in the background, knowing contextually everything that's going on. And there's people who don't watch our podcast, you know, even as we talk, there's little tells and gives and such like that you might not pick up if you were just purely listening to the transcripts. And that's sort of where these cameras are going to start kicking in, aren't they? And adding to the context that these models work with. And it works well because obviously OpenAI's got a lot of these image, video and real-time voice model foundations. Whether he's pulling it all together or it's just spending a little bit more cash continues from that point of view, doesn't it? So
side quests.
It'd be great to see something get out the door and it not just be a puck or a pencil or a set of glasses.
Yeah, 100%. So yes, excited to see where all that goes to. All right, that is our AI and tech news for this week. We are going to just dip into our occasional series, Weird AI of the Week. All right, this is about Martin Scorsese, who doesn't feature that often on our podcast, it's fair to say. I know he's a great listener. Likes to make sure he keeps up to date with all the stuff that we talk about. But he's got a backlash this week. He's been out basically talking about how he uses AI to storyboard a lot of his films now. And for those using AI to do things on a slightly lesser scale, such as how am I going to do my website, or what am I going to do my presentation for, we'll recognize that this is actually an eminently sensible way of using AI. For me, I've always found AI really helpful in terms of articulating what I'm visualizing. So, whether that's the website, whether that's, my portal or whatever, being able to explain it to an AI and then actually argue with AI or go through a few rounds of design is really, really helpful, because then you can present it to developers and others as something that is real, rather than just trying to get them to understand what the hell you're on about. So Scorsese's been using Black Forest Labs, which is quite an interesting one, because they kind of disappeared a little bit. They were very much in the kind of video era. They were part of I think they were the first Grok video and audio and kind of powering that system. But yes, he has come out and been an advert for it and said it's amazing. He's 83 years old and he's like, this is This is really, really good. And unsurprisingly, he is now coming for a torrent of abuse, basically from the anti-AIers out there. And yeah, he's been accused of throwing artists under buses. And to use his legacy and power for this is just disgusting. So yeah, it's really quite punchy, isn't it?
It's polarizing, isn't it? This sort of stuff, and you could argue that in a weekend. So last weekend, we saw two AI generated films overtake Mandalorian and Grogu. I think that's like Baby Yoda, isn't it?
That's right.
As the grossing films for the weekend, both of those films created by basically YouTube vloggers or whatever the right term is these days.
It's so
And they're taking over. One's called Obsession, one's called Backrooms. They are like proper AI generated films that are grossing more than sort of mass produced films like a Star Wars release. And so actually, is it giving these, call them artists, with these concepts and such like the opportunity to go toe to toe with the big boys? And Scorsese, I think it's quite interesting him showing and talking through the video on Black Forest Labs, and I'm guessing it'll go out in the newsletter if it hasn't already, but where he's sort of saying, think of a town, not a city, not a village. I want a winding street. I want some cobbles. I want to move the camera up here. You could sort of, I really enjoyed it because it's like hearing how he would direct a film, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen it from Steven Soderbergh's used AI, and there's been various backlashes against animators, hasn't there? It's one you could say, well, it's breaking it, and you're making money off the history of all these people who've created it, because that's how the models are trained over time, and you're taking that and not passing it on. You're making money off the back of all their hard work, but also you're saying to young upstarts like yourself, go create a Bittersweet Symphony style video and wander the streets of Doncaster without having to spend a fortune shipping up there and filming it properly.
Yeah, and I do think there is an irony here. I think particularly in filmmaking, where you look back, I'm sure when film first came along, there was all the actors in the theatre going, "This is outrageous! Why are you using this technology to try to usurp us?" And instead of people come to the theatres, they're going to go to the movies, and and that's really bad for actors, and that's really bad for stage technicians and all that sort of stuff, which was true. And now you've got all these film actors and even things like animators and stuff like that, who definitely use technology to animate their stuff, basically getting their pitchforks and their torches out and kind of coming after Scorsese and Spielberg and others. And I just think it is it democratizes this stuff, right? I'm sure that drummers hate drum machines, but now we've got far more music and things like that. So look, I think it's going to be an absolute boon for creators who perhaps aren't as good at one particular thing. They're good at lots of things, and they're able to now see their let their imaginations run wild, create stuff, build stuff that they never were able to before. Just like every technology in the past has enabled more people to do things that they that were the preserve of a few in the past. And yes, it does mean that those people are less, have less leverage and are able to charge less, and there will probably be less of those doing that specific stuff, but there'll be far more people doing far more good stuff. And as you say, whether or not you have a taste for YouTubers, turning their hand to films and stuff like that, the fact that it is that people are willing to pay to go and see it kind of answers the question. It's like, this isn't, this is progress. This is the way we're going. And I just think, people, kept saying that it's, I think there was Guillermo del Toro said last year that he'd rather die than use AI. And I bet that in the next year or so, he will find himself in some way, shape or form using AI and not dying. All right. That's our weird AI of the week. Let's move on to our tool of the week. Matt, this is one from you. It's Microsoft. So Microsoft had their big shindig, didn't they, this week? And they've launched something new that is very similar to the kind of OpenClaw harness stuff, right?
They did. It's we're in hot AI summer, aren't we? Basically, and we've got the Google side. You've just alluded earlier on about the WWDC for Apple coming up, a Microsoft Build conference. There's a number of things that they obviously covered during the course of theirs, and there's even a one passing line that is it their CEO. Remind me of his name? Yeah, there you go.
Satya.
Yeah, he made a very passing reference to they're building a super app in the same way that Anthropic built the super app with Claude Cowork and Codex's OpenAI's one, but it was literally a sentence, then he moved on. So quite when that's going to drop, who knows? But the one that really interested me was Scout, which is basically their OpenClaw inspired assistant that's, even when you're talking autonomously in the background, it's pulling together your teams and your Outlook and your SharePoint and various Microsoft documents to ensure that they're ready and presented to you as and when you need them, rather than you having to think, I'm going to go off and request some meeting notes for this call with Mal. It's going to be pulling all those things together. Unfortunately, at the moment, unless you're in the Frontier group, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be for Microsoft, it may well not be available for you. But if nothing else, it might be one of those things where you think, actually, get myself on that Microsoft Frontier program so I can have some of these new releases that keep popping out there.
Yeah, the direction of travel. Yeah, again, it's just kind of indicative that basically this is where it's all going. If Microsoft's doing it, they tend to be a little bit behind. I think it's probably fair to say many of the other kind of cutting edge development houses. But yeah, the fact that they are, as you say, drawing together your Word, your PowerPoint, your Outlook, and all this sort of stuff, and able to kind of harness them together, and you are able to then to use one set of AI tools across the whole lot. I think is going to be another kind of moment where, for people, from who have used Office since the 90s, or it's still plowing on with the Microsoft stack, they're going to feel a lot more AI in their kind of lives on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's going to be, again, kind of good for everybody understanding what is now possible, for sure. All right, that is all we've got time for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. Matt, you got a busy weekend on the cards?
Absolutely nothing. Next week's Property Mark 1, isn't it? So will we see you, or are you going to be touring the country?
I will actually be away for that, so no, I'm not going to be able to make it, sadly. But yes, we will have to organise when we're going to do this as well. It might be Thursday. But yes, so sadly not going to be able to make that. But yes, very excited to hear all the stuff that comes out of it, for sure. Whatever you are doing out there this weekend, enjoy it, have an amazing time, and we will catch up with you in 6 or 7 days. All the best. Take care.
Take care, everyone.